In our previous episode, Lin finally got a first-hand look at what a real battle between the divine level looked like. After that, his teacher told him he could head back. Before leaving, Lin formally paid his respects as a student and then returned to the academy. Now he had only one thing on his mind: leveling up and preparing for his second-class transfer. But where in the academy was the best place to grind levels besides the dungeon hall? The scene shifts to the ever-bustling dungeon hall. It was as lively as ever, filled with students eager to grind some dungeons. However, there was an extra buzz in the air today because Princess Yao had arrived. The moment she appeared, she instantly became the center of attention, turning plenty of heads. She scanned the place. Her eyes eventually landed on the Water God Temple, a level 37 dungeon. With her own level at 36, this was the perfect choice. Now, all she needed was a solid team. She believed that with her around, clearing it wouldn't be an issue. And with so many students eager to impress her, forming a party should be easy. Well, at least that was the plan, until everyone's attention suddenly shifted away from her. Someone arrived at the dungeon hall, instantly drawing every gaze in the room. And that very person turned out to be none other than Linny. Yao, momentarily stunned, blinked in surprise, wondering what's he doing here. The crowd, however, erupted with excitement. Some called out his name, while others quickly corrected them, insisting that they should start addressing our boy as Divine General Lin, the youngest Divine General in human history, the one who had single-handedly wiped out an army of 10,000 dragons. Chatters flooded the hall. People claimed our boy was unbeatable. Some even speculated that once he hit his third-class transfer, he might be able to take on a demon lord alone. Yao finally pieced it all together. So this was Lin? No wonder he had been taken in as the disciple of the Lord Berserk. Meanwhile, she was in Lin's way. With the place already super crowded, he calmly asked if she could make some room. For a moment, she was caught off guard. That's it? No reaction? No interest? That made her feel a bit sour, and she wondered just why he was always treating her like this. Seeing her expression, our boy softened his tone slightly, explaining that he was here to grind levels and was in a hurry. If she had something to discuss, it would have to wait until after he was done. Not one to give up so easily, Yao quickly asked if he was also planning to run the Water God Temple. If so, she suggested teaming up. Lin shook his head, saying he planned to solo it. Yao believed that wasn't efficient at all. She tried to reason with him, saying that running the dungeon alone on normal difficulty would be painfully slow. Lin corrected her, saying he meant to solo hell-level difficulty. Yao didn't quite believe him. There was no way someone could solo a hell difficulty dungeon. Just as she was about to say something, Lin was already walking toward the entrance. By then, our boy was already checking the dungeon leaderboard. The current record completion time for this dungeon is about 1 hour and 8 minutes, except hell difficulty wasn't even unlocked yet. This means he would have to upgrade it first. He turned back to her briefly and suggested she hold off on running the dungeon for now. Before she could fully process what he meant, Lin selected Nightmare difficulty and stepped inside. Yao was surprised, but the crowd, not so much. To them, this was just another day in the legend of Lin. Soloing dungeons was his thing. It was Lin who had caused the Fire God Palace dungeon to upgrade last time, and it was still fresh in everyone's memory how he had carried 39 people solo through the Tyrant's Desert. That particular feat remains a hot topic even now. No one was questioning if he could clear the dungeon. Instead, they were placing bets on what kind of ridiculous record he was about to set this time. Yao hadn't realized just how deeply ingrained Lin's reputation was. The more she heard, the more curious she became. If he really managed to solo Tyrant's Desert, then just how strong was he? Meanwhile, inside the Water God Temple, Lin found himself in a place filled with flowing water. Stone pillars stood in the center, surrounded by cascading waterfalls. The first creatures he encountered were spring water spirits. Not particularly strong, but completely immune to the water element and physical attacks. Annoying, but nothing he couldn't handle. He quickly summoned a group of skeletal mages. Then, for good measure, he called forth his undead general as a backup. What followed was nothing short of a massacre. With an efficiency that could only be described as cheating, he wiped out every creature in sight. His skellies quickly spread out, clearing out every room and searching for the boss room while he examined the stone pillars. Strange inscriptions covered their surface, seemingly telling a story. The dungeon itself was easy. In no time, the entire place was cleared. At the very end of the temple, a mysterious pond appeared. Lin eyed it for a moment. There was only one way forward. Without hesitation, he jumped in. The moment he hit the water, a powerful whirlpool sucked him downward. At the same time, a system message appeared, informing dungeon upgraded, entering hell-level difficulty. And just like last time, clearing out the outer section of the dungeon fast enough had caused the dungeon to upgrade. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon hall, the change didn't go unnoticed. The dungeon's entrance flickered, signaling a new difficulty was unlocked. Whispers spread through the crowd. Then, everyone realized Lin had actually done it. Yao rushed forward, checking the crystal ball for herself. There it was, the hell-level difficulty. That guy is actually capable of soloing a hell-level dungeon? For the first time, she wasn't just impressed, she was downright fascinated. The more she learned about Lin, the more she wanted to know. And right now, all she wanted was to understand everything about him. By now, our boy had arrived at the Grand Palace, its towering doors standing firm like they hadn't been touched in ages. He was about to force his way in when, out of nowhere, a trident shot out from inside. There was no time to dodge. The trident slammed into his skeletal armor with surprising force. However, compared to everything else he had experienced, this was barely a scratch. Before he could react, the massive doors slowly creaked open, revealing a barrage of those same tridents flying toward his skeletons. But Lin's trusty skellies barely flinched. The undead general wasted no time casting Legion Healing, patching up any minor scratches while the skeletons pushed forward. They quickly tore apart the palace walls and made their way inside. It didn't take long for them to reach the grand hall's center where a throne stood. Beside it, a gleaming trident was embedded in the floor. Detection skill quickly identified it as a water god's trident. However, it was just a projection, but that likely explained the earlier attack. Without hesitation, Lin commanded his skellies to seize it. The trident pulsed with light, and in an instant, a massive water barrier erupted, blasting the skeletons backward. The skeletal mages at the rear unleashed a flurry of spells, forcefully shattering the water shield. The skeletal warriors wasted no time, hacking away at the trident as if it owed them money. Just then, another barrier appeared, and from within, several water dragons coiled into existence. They roared, causing waves to ripple through the chamber. Now, of course, they looked pretty cool and scary, but it's just another walk in the park for the skellies. The dragons barely held out before they were overwhelmed, and with one final crack, the barrier shattered. That's when someone appeared. A woman materialized on the throne and turned out to be the water god's fragmented projection. Finally, he gets to see the actual boss. The skeletal mages didn't hesitate. Another volley of spells rained down, already doing tons of damage. The boss wasn't happy about that. Gripping the trident, she unleashed her first skill, Eternal Freeze. The palace temperature plummeted. Frost spread in an instant, freezing the skeletons in the very front solid. Maybe back when he was only level 30, this might have been an issue. But now, not even close. The undead general broke free first, slamming his scepter into the ground, activating its skills and dispelling the freeze effect on the entire army. Just like that, the skellies surged forward once more. The boss went for another counter, summoning a massive water tornado, but this time Lin stepped in using Slow Curse. Massive red shackles were shot out, wrapping around her. She struggled, but the skellies weren't the sentimental type. In mere moments, it was over. The system notified him that he had defeated the water god's fragmented projection, earning 4.1 million experience and obtaining 2 clear water crystal fragments. Not bad, but the rewards felt underwhelming. And worse, Lin was still only halfway to leveling up. At this point, his experience bar might as well be the final boss of the story. Just as he was about to leave, the trident beside the throne flickered again. He hesitated, then reached out to touch it. The system then notified him of acquiring key to the True Water God's Temple and Clearwater Gem, which permanently reduces water elemental damage by 50%, with a small chance to obtain a water-based skill. Now that was more like it. He nearly missed it. Turns out the real rewards were hidden right here. The key was secured, but something still felt off. Based on past experiences, there had to be another item capable of awakening the water god. He searched carefully, scanning every inch of the chamber until his eyes landed on an ancient stone pillar. Embedded within was a water god's flute. That was it. He had already cleared multiple elemental dungeons, and now, he was itching to see what kind of changes would occur once he gathered them all. But first, there was something else to take care of. Lin decided to use the Clearwater gem right away. Meanwhile, back at the dungeon hall, a deep, resonating chime rang, indicating a new record had been set. There was no need to guess who it was. At this point, everyone just knew it was Lin. A few of them chuckled, shaking their heads in amusement. One of them casually remarked that first-run records never counted. When asked why, he simply smirked and said, "Because Divine General Lin always beats his own record." This was just the beginning, nowhere near his true limit. Princess Yao wasn't even sure how to respond anymore. She glanced up at the leaderboard and read 48 minutes, 22 seconds. The guy just soloed a hell-level dungeon, and yet somehow, that wasn't even his best. And then, just as the discussion heated up, Lin returned to the dungeon hall. Without hesitation, he used his points to reset the dungeon's cooldown. The crowd barely had time to process what was happening before our boy just went straight back into the dungeon, this time also the hell-level difficulty. By now, betting tables popped up out of nowhere. Some were placing wagers on whether he'd cut his own record in half, breaking the 24-minute mark. Yao was stunned. Were people actually betting on this? And more importantly, did they really expect him to clear it in less than half his previous time? Just what had this man done before to make that seem reasonable to everyone?